Ya Ali Madad, I hope you're all keeping well and safe. My name is Noreen Sharif, and I will be your host for this evening. Before I share the programme for tonight, here are some highlights of the board activities this week. Tomorrow we begin with the Golden Club at 12:30 p.m, consisting of faith and well-being talks and an opportunity for members of the Jamaat to socialise and support lifelong learning. Details on how to join can be found on yesterday's Al-Sahar. On Tuesday, 4th May, join Pervez for the chair and standing exercise class at 11 a.m. On Tuesday, 4th May, Muslim communities come together to mark Laylatul Qadr during the last 10 days of Ramadan. The night of Qadr is perhaps one of the most sacred nights of the year for believers. The Holy Quran tells us that on this night, the portal to divine grace is open and angels descend upon the earth. Please join us at your local Jamaati Zoom Connect program to celebrate Laylatul Qadr, which will include a message from your local Mukhi Kamriya, a readout on the significance of the Night of Power, the recitation of a verse from the Quran, poetry and qasidas, a video of Maulana Hazri Imam's visit to Syria, some reflection time, as well as an Itrab talk by Al-Wise Faisal Ali. Mark your calendars for the special local Jamaati Zoom Connect session from 8 till 9 p.m. on Tuesday, 4th May. Details on how to join your local Jamaati Zoom call can be obtained from your local Jamaati Mukhi Kamriya. Would you like to learn more about building an emotional bond with your baby? Are you curious about how to tune in to your child's needs? Have you considered the importance of your own mental well-being as you embark on your parenting journey? Join the Women's Activities Portfolio on Wednesday, 5th May at 8 p.m. for the next Preparing for Parenthood interactive workshop to mark Maternal Mental Health Awareness Day. Details on how to join can be found on Al-Sahar and on social media. Similarly, on Wednesday, 5th May at 8 p.m, join the Aga Khan Education Board for an evening webinar on careers in teaching. A number of speakers will cover a number of topics from the impacts teachers make around the world to pathways into teaching. And finally, are you unsure of what to do this summer? Are you missing summer camps? If the answer is yes, then we have what you are looking for. Virtual summer camps are back again this summer. Camp Mosaic returns for those aged 8 to 13 years. Join us on a journey like no other, full of fun, friendship and faith as we explore our religion, compete in games, learn new skills and make memories. Camp Connect also returns for those aged 14 to 17 years, where you can join for the opportunity to explore the Aga Khan Development Network, work on creative projects, discuss current issues and meet Ismailis from all over the world. Interested in facilitating, aged 18 plus, register now for the chance to help shape a young person's future and meet some incredible people along the way. Want more information? Head to akysb.iiuk.org, summer camps, or if you're ready to register, head to the Ismaili app now. And now on to tonight's programme, which is by the Aga Khan music programme called Revitalising Our Cultural Heritage, journey through Muslim societies to explore the role of music in creating our cultural identity. Firouz Nishanova, director of the Aga Khan music program, discusses the work and ethos of the program, showcasing the ways in which our musical heritages continue to define us. I hope you enjoy tonight's program. Continue to stay safe and well. Ya Ali Madad.
Hello and welcome. Today, I'm delighted to share with you the news that His Highness the Aga Khan approved the creation of the Aga Khan Music Program, which, effective immediately, will take over all existing activities of the Aga Khan Music Initiative and the Aga Khan Music Awards. While our name changes and our activities are strengthened and solidified, our nature remains the same. The 5 main areas of the Aga Khan Music Program's work are the awards, music education and mentoring, creation and performance, production, documentation and dissemination, and online projects and archives. We express our endless gratitude to His Highness the Aga Khan and Prince Amin Aga Khan for the clarity and generosity of their vision and leadership.
Listening to music, practicing music, sharing music can bring a strong cultural anchor, deepening a sense of community, identity, and heritage, while simultaneously reaching out in powerful ways to people of different backgrounds.
All you need to do is, you see at the bottom of the slide, there is a Vimeo channel that the newly created AKMP, Aga Khan Music Program, operates. And we also have a very easy handle. It's Aga Khan Music, all in one word. And that works on Instagram, that works on YouTube, that works on Facebook, where we have the channels where they're not promotional sites. There's no fundraising there going on. This is just a very simple way of following our news, basically, and being up to date on what Aga Khan Music Program now is regularly gets up to. So let's go back to the plan for 2 sessions. Now, one of the first things you will notice about when you look at AKDN is that, as we all know, AKDN has this wonderful integrated approach to development. And the key agencies in 3 main domains of development, economic, social, and cultural, have their own logos. The logos are developed under very strict guidelines and very strict supervision by His Highness the Aga Khan. And it's very, very rare that a single program, not an agency, but a single program gets its own logo. So far, I only know of the Aga Khan University, of the University of Central Asia, of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture. And I'm delighted that the Aga Khan Music Program was given the permission and authorization by His Highness to bear its own individual identity, its own individual logo. Now, you can see the logo in your upper left-hand corner. And what I want to do is build this presentation by talking to you about the individual triangles of the logo and tie them in with our key activities. And when I say our key activities, as you could hear in that little film that we were trying to share with you, there are 5 main key areas of work for the Aga Khan Music Program, but we will not be covering all of them today. Today we will concentrate on the education and mentoring. And we will then go into partnerships, because these are the very basis of our work. If there's no dedication and continued investment and involvement in education and arts and music education in all the countries in which we work, then the rest of the program disappears. So what we will do is we will go through some of the individual triangles of this presentation. And I will try and explain to you what do they signify and how, in many ways, they've guided our work. Now, the first one is Zaman, time. Now, those of you who are familiar with the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, you will know that that logo was created in 1979. And that was the first logo given, as the first separate logo given to an individual program. And His Highness has really taken time to work with Karl Schlavenger, extraordinary architect and calligrapher who created that logo, by simply taking the word Allah and rendering it in a Kufic script, creating that beautiful square of the Aga Khan Award for Architecture, which signifies not only the Almighty, but also a simple courtyard, without which the architecture in the Islamic world is unimaginable. We wanted to go similar route and identify words, if I go back for a little bit, with which music and musical experience and artistic learning is unimaginable in the East. Because, as you very well know, music is not written down in the East. It's not rendered in music scores. So it wasn't possible to just sort of put a key, a music key, as you would always do in a Western musical tradition, to create a symbol around this logo. nor was it possible to signify a single instrument that would symbolize the music all over the world of the Great East. That's also not possible just because of the unique degree of richness and diversity that music and musical art in the East represents. So after many, many back and forth and different attempts, we concentrated on these 6 words, 6 concepts that represent everything that Aga Khan Music Program stands for. And that is, of course, the East, the experience of listening, the teaching, inspiration, time, and breath or soul, which accompany the experience of creating music, making music, being exposed to music, and living through music. And the first one is time. What I will do in the Zaman domain is that I'll show you a little bit of all the most significant key events in the Aga Khan Music Program's relatively short or long life. This, you will see the key elements or key time domains of the Aga Khan music program. And I will take you through all of them, but this is our time so far. And obviously the first significant date for us is 2002, when the partnership with the Smithsonian Folklife Festival and Center for Cultural Heritage started. But obviously that did not happen in 2002. 2002 was the date by which we've come together in Washington, D.C. But the work began much earlier than that. However, that's not what most people see. And here comes the second triangle. Now, obviously, it's not a secret to anybody that the work that we do is not always in the East, but it is the Eastern root and the Eastern tradition and the Eastern connection that unites all the work of AKDN. Let's look at what we have published on our website on Friday night when we defined the Aga Khan music program. What we said was that the mission of the program is to foster the development of living musical heritage in the societies across the world where Muslims have significant presence, and then to disseminate this work internationally through partnerships, exceptionally creative musicians, artists, educators, and art presenters. There are so many minefields and so many questions in this very short and simple definition. And first of all, what is living musical heritage? How do you define a society in which Muslims have a significant presence? Can that only be in the East? Could this be worldwide? How do you build international network of creative collaborations? How do you define exceptionally creative artists? Who is there to give out those marks? I'm going to take you back to 2002 again. Now, what you see on this stage, on these 3 photos, is a stage. This is 28th or 29th of June 2002, the opening day of the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. On my right, you see 3 key figures that were behind the creative of it. His Highness the Aga Khan in the middle, General Colin Powell, at that time still active member of the government, and Senator Teddy Kennedy. Right behind them, you see a wonderful, legendary musician, Yo-Yo Ma. What happened is that in the late 90s, AKDN as an institution made a commitment to the region of Central Asia. And as all of you know, we have the commitment to the integrated approach. So when we come to a region, we do not offer a menu of only the activities that the region or the country or the government require the most. You cannot pick and choose. You can't go with only educational activities or only social, only economic, or only cultural. What has to be done is they have to be taken as a package. Our approach is an integrated one. And we stay committed to it. We stay committed to the belief that the development is maximized when economic, social, and cultural activities are closely interconnected and carried out cooperatively in accordance with a very comprehensive and long-range plan. But what happens when AKDN, an organization that is described as a contemporary endeavor of the Ismaili Imamate, wanders into the domain of arts and music education? Well, Central Asia happened. imagine AKDN. I can't see all of you. I can't see which regions of the world you come in, but I'm sure that you've all experienced the way AKDN comes into a region. We drop these teams of experts onto a country or region that most requires our help. And we define what are their most acute and most immediate needs in the 3 domains in which we carry the expertise: economic, social, cultural development. Now, when in the late 90s, AKDM made the commitment to the region of Central Asia, the economic development activities were very easy to define because, as many of you know, those countries were just coming from under 70 years of the Soviet rule. They didn't have a civil code, they didn't have a financial code, they didn't have links with the outside world, or not the links that would allow them to function as independent partners. So whatever we could offer in the domain of economic development was very readily accepted. In the social development domain, it was also quite easy to define the needs that were most acute. It was development of enterprises, support to the NGOs, healthcare institutions, support to the women's domains and women's NGOs and organizations, and also all levels of education that AKDN could offer: tertiary, secondary, university, academies. All of that was very much welcome. Yet, when it came to culture, I think for the first time in its history, AKDN did not know what to offer because its flagship program, Aga Khan Award for Architecture, had no project that it could readily work with in Central Asia. The same was true for the Historic Cities program. There were no sites that demanded immediate attention of AKDN. Why? Because so many of them were restored without any respect for the traditions that AKDN promulgates and implements. So that was not the case. And at the same time, it became very clear that it was the traditional music of the region and the arts and music education of the region that most required our help. How was that apparent? I go back to the Smithsonian Folklife Festival in 2002. Very often, it's the perspective that changes when you look at it at a distance. So, Central Asia, AKDN commitment, and many thousands of kilometers away, in the United States, extraordinary artist and musician Yo-Yo Ma makes a pitch to His Highness the Aga Khan personally, Prince Amin Aga Khan as well, and AKDN as a whole, and presents his vision and his initiative that later became known as the Silk Road Ensemble. What he wanted was very simple on the surface. He wanted to reunite in a single room extraordinary artists, improvisers, and composers who came from all over the countries that signify in today's geography the Great Silk Route. And his intentions and the intentions of the organization were to create music that was contemporary, but fully and deeply rooted in the tradition. In other words, the tradition was to be used for a creation of something completely new, but easily identified as deeply rooted in the classical tradition of the East, because that's where the Silk Road is, where most of the Silk Road is. Now, His Highness, as you know, and the AKDN readily accepted the partnership with Yo-Yo and the Silk Road project on one condition. The condition was that the very heart of the Silk Road, of the ancient Silk Route, post-Soviet Central Asia, parts of parts of Afghanistan, parts of Pakistan, parts of China, that they become equal part of the Silk Road Ensemble and the initiative, because they were completely and utterly absent. Why? Again, simple, the access wasn't there. It's much easier to work with an artist from Iran or China or India rather than try and enter Afghanistan or, at that time, Soviet or post-Soviet Central Asia. So AKDN decided to facilitate the access, do the selection of the artists, bring them over to the creative sessions in the United States, and then have this music performed all over the world, starting with the Smithsonian Folklife Festival in 2002. And I remember being part of that wonderful gathering in Tanglewood in Massachusetts when we had artists from all over the ancient Silk Route sitting together, creating pieces. And my pride for having facilitated the presence of the composers and improvisers and artists from Central Asia and Afghanistan quickly turned into fear, because it became apparent that what was easily done by a composer from China, Iran, or India was unimaginable for a composer who came from Central Asia. In other words, the pieces were not interesting, not deep enough. They were either a copy of a version of the tradition or a poor attempt at innovation, but not a complete composition. And I remember sitting there thinking, why? What was the reason? What was the underlying defect? That's when we went back to our work, to the menu we were offering to the states of Central Asia, and that's when the discovery that we made was not an artistic at all. It was a scary one. It was a discovery of an evaporation of 2 generations worth of a musical memory throughout the region. It was the discovery that signified either a distraction or a complete modification of the time-honored arts and music education method of Ustad Shagird or master apprentice that was not only taken away or replaced, it was also substituted through a prism of Western classical music education. There was no system that could allow a youngster to become a professional musician or a scholar of music if he or she wanted to study the music of their own region. What they had to do instead was to go through a Western conservatory type education, which sometimes had a traditional music department, where the music of the region was classified as second class, as folk, not composed traditional classical music of the region, not music created under the patronage of the local rulers for centuries. No, it was folk, it was second class, it was something that was not musically scored. In other words, it wasn't worthy of studying. It wasn't necessarily worthy of performing, and it certainly wasn't worthy of being studied as a profession, as a life's dedication. Let me pause here and ask you to answer my question. What was the reason for that? What do you think? You can either, if you write your answers in a chat box, I might not see them, but then Fahim will and Shahina will, or you can unmute yourself and tell me what you think. What was so dangerous about this music that it had to be replaced, hidden, forgotten, or attempted at what was so dangerous about it?
I think it might have been the Taliban at the time in Afghanistan, where there was music was not allowed. It
was certainly the Taliban. Absolutely, very good guess. But why? Why was music so dangerous? Why it had to be? Why the instruments had to be buried and chopped into pieces and burned? Why were shamans of Kazakhstan almost arrested for performing their music? Why was the makams of Central Asia in Tajikistan and Uzbekistan? Why were they either completely removed from the repertoire, or only small, short fragments of them were allowed for public performance, like museum pieces that do not inspire any kind of live interaction? What was the reason for that?
I think Firoz, one response that I've received in the chat box says that it was probably due to the Soviet rule, and it was because of the religion and music combination that made it challenge to the authority in some ways. So that was one of the response that came across. The other said because music has threads that connect to the identity piece, and the state wanted to present identity in a certain way. Another response says that it's a threat to identity and a cultural heritage rather than acknowledging a shared identity in that way. There are quite other responses. One that stands out, it says that in order to subjugate a population, it's easy to remove certain parts of their identity, and then you lose from generation to the other those pieces in your identity. So yeah, and there's still some responses coming around.
This is very good. I'm really, you see, this tells me that I've been doing this for 20 years. I've been shouting about this for a long time. So I'm really glad that you're getting that. I'll tell you my version of an answer. To me, the key component as to why this music is so dangerous is simple. It's its basis, which is devotional content. So many of us come from the East, even though we live in the West. Sometimes we go back and forth between East and West. But as a crowd, how many of us are here today? 54. No, more than that. Doesn't matter. There's quite a crowd of us, but we are Eastern, right? Our roots are in the East. And the East has one very clear difference from the West. There are many, but to me, one that stands out is that music has never been, historically, and not often is today, viewed as pure entertainment. Entertainment as such is a very Western concept, where you buy a ticket to go and be entertained. Yes, music, we could view this as an entertainment in the East, but it was never just sort of a pleasureful, entertaining concert viewing. Music is something that is an integral part of Eastern everyday life. This is how history is passed down from one generation to another. This is how customs are learned. You will know that in the East, the most important moments of a human being's life, be it birth, be it coming of age, be it a wedding, be it a funeral, those important moments are accompanied by music, and in many communities are led by local musicians who also serve as healers, as history tellers, as storytellers, as conductors of the most important events in the society. Now, when you have some destructive or overwhelming force, such as Taliban in Afghanistan, such as the Soviet Union. Now, Soviet Union wasn't necessarily destructive to music. What it was trying to do is it was trying to create a new type of civil society. It was trying to create a new identity of a new citizen. It had 15 republics that were geographically united into a single space. And I think people don't often remember just how enormous, just how huge Soviet Union was. But if you imagine Afghanistan and Poland in the same country, it's exactly the same difference, geographic distance, as between Tajikistan and Lithuania. That's exactly the same. So imagine taking all of that space and making sure that people had the same passport, spoke the same language, adhered to the same principles, and chief among those principles was atheism. So anything that connected local societies to their own roots, which were almost always devotional, that had to be cut, that had to be replaced, that had to be modified, was tampered, made into a museum form. Because what happens when you see an object in the museum? What is your first reaction? You look at it, you admire it. Sometimes you say, no big deal, nothing to be admired, but you certainly don't touch it. You don't take it, you don't shatter it, and then you don't take the pieces and examine them. But this is what needs to happen to a musical tradition every single generation. The musical tradition dies unless every single generation of artists and audiences takes it along and makes it their own. It's clear that education was the problem. So what we had to do in the beginning was very simple. We had to go into the countries that AKDN defined as key priorities in the region. And at the beginning, that was Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan, so 5 countries. We had to find the masters, the music masters, the ustads, who still had the ability to teach and share on their knowledge, and who also had trust in us. Who trusted us with taking their profession and making it into something that it used to be in the past, but no longer was, which is worthy of respect. So we had to find the masters. We had to give them simplest administrative and financial means to carry on their knowledge and craft. We had to create schools, testing centers, creative centers, and then we had to work with the local governments in each country to give the method of education that we were trying to create legitimacy. Because we were very clear that this kind of education method had to be made appropriate to the kids of today. The kids who are walking on the streets of Central Asia today do not have 20 years at their disposal to move into the house of the master and learn the craft from zero to the moment when they become a master themselves. It had to be contemporized, and that contemporized music education method had to be tested. The governments were not interested in testing that. So we had to not only create the schools, but also create the testing centers, which not only gave shape to the methodology, but could also serve as a live demonstration to the local ministries of culture, to the local ministries of education, that gave, in the end, legitimacy to that method. We then had to do something to bring back the respect to the profession. And as it always happens, or often happens, the recognition abroad brings back the respect at home. If the recognition abroad is also accompanied with the prospect of financial sustainability and financial viability, now that's when the schools and centers that we were creating really started to be popular. We therefore made a vow to work with presenters worldwide, to present the kind of music that we were trying to restore, to present the masters and their students that were both teaching and studying in our centers, but present them in the settings that were never afforded to this kind of music. In other words, rather than going in London to the Barbican, where you would go to listen to some weird world music coming from Shambhala or Roof of the World, we would go to the English National Opera or the Wigmore Hall. So the stages that were never ever graced world music with attention. So we had to not only prove to them that this was the music of the quality that was worthy of their attention, we also had to present it in a way that it didn't look completely foreign to the Western audiences. So we had to use the most up-to-date technology to wipe out the gap between the artists and the audience. We had to use films, we had to use translations of the songs, but very quickly, any theater in Western Europe that plans its season between classical music, theater, spoken word, poetry, dance, and world music started using us, Aga Khan Music Initiative, as we were then known, as reference for presenting world music concerts. Then came moment for partnerships. We realized that we can only develop the tradition to a very limited extent if we were continuously teaching and preserving it. It wasn't helping it grow. To really help it grow, we had to reconnect artists and artistic communities in all the countries in which we work between themselves. Recreate the kind of artistic dialogue that always existed between neighboring regions and faraway regions, but because of the danger in certain countries under the terrible rules such as Taliban, because of the Cold War, because of the Iron Curtain, that collaboration among artistic communities pretty much ceased to exist. When we started developing artistic collaborations, we did so in two paths. One path was East-East partnership, because when we think about fusion music, collaborative music, we almost automatically think East-West. But this is not how fusion music started. It started from neighboring communities and artistic communities talking to each other. So we started to revive the East-East partnership, and this will be the task for our next gathering. But we also had to follow the cliche, and we had to do something in the East-West partnership, and we refused to do so many things that the others were already doing and doing that not well. We wanted to create a partnership that was meaningful. And that kind of partnership requires extensive studying on the part of both parts of the creative process. What this tells you is three things. First, music needs to be experienced live and not through a Zoom. And talking about music is very often oxymoron. Second thing it tells you is that there's no such thing as traditional music, world music, pop, rap, classical. There's good music and bad music. And our job is to ensure that good music in the countries in which it originated becomes cool again. When it becomes just as prestigious to carry a rubab or a tanbur or a dutar on one's shoulder as carrying a guitar, then our job will have been done. And the third thing this little clip tells you is that good music is not easily created. It takes time, it takes dedication, it takes skill, and it takes the kind of belief, trust, and patronage that we are so extraordinarily lucky to experience from His Highness the Aga Khan. Without his vision, without his blessing, without his deep understanding of the details of this work, none of this would ever be possible or in existence. So I'll stop here. We'll open the floor to questions, and then next time when we meet, we will go into the East-East partnerships, the basis for this work, and then the creation of the Aga Khan Music Awards, and what does that signify, and where do we go 2020 onwards in the hopefully post-COVID world. Thank you.